Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And Will Robinson Smith will be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. While the weather was a little bit hairy earlier today, we are welcoming in quite a lovely sunset here at the press site of Florida Space Coast as we are heading into the launch of SpaceX's 36th Starlink mission in 2024. Got the full team out for our live launch coverage today. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast. Our Adam Bernstein is preparing to track the rocket tonight and also do some still photography. Our Michael Kane is out and about doing some still photography as well. If you're not already following our team on X, you can find them at their handles. Michael Kane is at MD Kane Jr., Adam Bernstein at ABern NYC. And while you're there, if you're not already, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. And if you're not on X, formerly known as Twitter, you can also find us on Facebook and Threads as well. We are also joined in our work tonight by our friends Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck Briggs, whose view of the Falcon 9 rocket you can see here. This is Space Launch Complex 40, of course, over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. As the sun begins to set on the Sunshine State, we're currently T-minus 57 minutes, 19 seconds and counting away from the launch of the Starlink 6-59 mission. SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff of 8:32 p.m. Eastern. That is 0032 UTC. As we get things going tonight, I want to thank our moderators in the live chat for all they do to help us out. So thanks to Callistia Lee. And I don't see if they're in here at the moment, but perpetual thank you to Astro Jen, Astro Joe, and Rusty Shackelford as well. And a thanks to the little more than 1,700 of you who are joining with us live as we're kicking things off tonight. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button, share the stream. That allows more folks to find this live coverage and let the YouTube algorithm do its thing as we head on in towards the liftoff in 56 minutes and some change. We're also powered by a very wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like That Martin Guy, That Opal Guy, Cosmic Christie, Felicity Lee, who's also one of our mods, as I just mentioned, Josh King, Glenn A, Miles High, Grammy Pammy, Coltron 311, and others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, as well as the ability to watch the liftoff of all of our launches from the Cape in stunning 4K. Speaking of membership, I want to thank Callistia for kicking us off on a good note here, gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that generosity, Callistia. And to our newest 10 channel members, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Callistia in the live chat if you haven't already. Also want to thank Richard Barton for upgrading membership to the Mission Specialist level. Really appreciate that continued support, Richard. And thanks for what you do for the community. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about this mission or anything else up and coming in the realm of spaceflight, and your comment or question is appropriate to be read on the show, we'd love to bring you into the conversation, and you can do so by using the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about, but you'll be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and we're very appreciative of that. Currently T minus 53 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. As I mentioned, there was a fair amount of thunderstorm activity that rolled through Central Florida earlier today. It has since moved on out of here, as you can see from our live cameras. Coming into this launch attempt, the L-1 launch forecast from the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a gradient of launch weather for a liftoff. They're looking at about 75% favorable conditions at liftoff, improving to 95% conditions. The two watch items being the anvil cloud rule and the cumulus cloud rule. However, things are pretty clear at this point, so not really seeing a lot of cloud activity to speak of, which is certainly good news as we continue to step on through the count. SpaceX is running its countdown, of course, from its Hangar X site here at KSC. It's the facility where they refurbish Falcon boosters and prepare them for future flights, as is certainly the case with the booster getting ready to take off in a little more than 52 minutes. This particular booster flying for a record 21st time since it first launched back in late 2020. We'll talk more about its flight history a little bit later on in the countdown. SpaceX also has support for this launch in part from the control room at its headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Again, tonight's launch looking for a liftoff from Pad 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station at 8:32 p.m. Eastern, 0032 UTC. If for whatever reason they are not ready to launch at that point and they have not started fueling, they do have multiple backup opportunities within their current launch window tonight that run until 11:30 p.m. Eastern. And if for whatever reason tonight is just not in the cards, they do have another launch window that is coming up tomorrow, Saturday, May 18th, which begins at 8:06 p.m. Eastern. Taking a look at the live chat here. I want to thank one of our channel members, Jeff Hansen, for a $5 super chat. Really appreciate that, Jeff. Jeff says, thank you, Will, Adam, Steve, Pete, and Chuck for all your hard work. And it certainly takes a little village here to make these live streams happen, and certainly appreciate the hard work of all the fellas not currently on the mic. I also want to welcome Jill Denny joining us with channel membership at the mission specialist level. Really appreciate that, Jill. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. So I mentioned the fueling countdown, and as long as SpaceX has not started fueling, they can shift around a little bit in the T0 time, but assuming that they are in a good position to launch at 8:32 p.m., let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline and what to expect as we step on through the countdown the next 50 minutes and a little bit. Countdown process for the Falcon 9 rocket begins with the go-ahead for the start of fueling. That's coming up at the T-minus 38-minute mark. Again, assuming SpaceX is in a good position to get things going, fueling itself will begin at T-minus 35 minutes with a couple of different events. RP1, or rocket-grade kerosene, will be loaded onto both the Falcon 9 first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen is loaded on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 16 minutes, second stage liquid oxygen load begins. But before that happens, at about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, we'll see the so-called big vent from the Strongback. Happens as the feed lines are being chilled in preparation for that second stage liquid oxygen load. T-minus 7 minutes, chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps. Protects the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the Strongback retract sequence begin. Starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, the Strongback, will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Stays in that position until liftoff, at which point pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of Falcon 9. About 3 minutes out, first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. T minus 2 minutes. Second stage LOX tank is topped off, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for liftoff at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds. And of course, if all 9 Merlin 1D engines are healthy and ignite as expected, flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for T0 liftoff. Again, targeting 8:32 p.m. Eastern, 0032 UTC, or in other words, T minus 47 minutes and 19 seconds. Now T minus 43 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. A little less than 6 minutes now till the planned time when the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load. Now, the T-minus 38-minute mark is not a hard and fast rule. That is more of a general time when we typically expect them to take that poll. But if they're ready and in a good position to do that earlier, they can go ahead and make that call. The fueling timeline, the rest of it, though, is a fairly static thing. Everything else needs to move on schedule. Although, that being said, within the last few minutes, we did get word from SpaceX, a note on social media that they're within an hour of the launch today, noting that all systems on the Falcon 9 rocket are, quote, looking good, and the weather is 95% favorable for liftoff. So, on the most positive end of the forecast from the 45th Weather Squadron, we're seeing those conditions now, and so it should be fairly beautiful liftoff, as you can see looking eastward here from our camera. Sunset tonight is set for 8:07 p.m. So with a liftoff just less than 30 minutes after that, we should see possibly a very nice jellyfish effect as the rocket begins its climb uphill. We're now T minus 39 minutes, 31 or 30, yeah, not 31 seconds and counting. Just a couple minutes away from the call and the start of prop load tonight. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank Robert C. for a $10 super chat. Really appreciate that, Robert, with a bit of humor in his comment as well, saying, God bless Elon and God bless the engineers. Needs to relax now, though. These super chats are getting expensive with so many launches. Thanks for such great coverage on your channel, too. We love it. Well, thank you for the kind words, Robert. And yes, the cadence of Falcon 9 flights is getting quite aggressive these days. But of course, the idea for NASA's Kennedy Space Center is, of course, to be a multi-user spaceport and to be able to operate robustly, increasingly more and more like an airport. And you have multiple flights in a day at an airport, and at some point we'll have multiple flights on a regular occurrence here in Florida. And in fact, there are multiple things behind the scenes that are not quite as obvious that are in work to get prepared for the ramp up, not only on the side of the Eastern Range and, of course, the infrastructure here at Casey, but also in the surrounding areas as well. The Brevard County Emergency Operations Center, which activates in support of each and every launch opportunity, whether the launch goes forward or not, every time they are in preparation for a launch or doing a launch related activity like a wet dress rehearsal where they're fueling a rocket, the EOC activates. And obviously, the EOC is also designed for more than just supporting rocket launches. It's also there as an emergency operations center for other emergencies like natural disasters and things like that. And so they've just completed work on a new, much larger building. We'll actually have a couple of open houses at the beginning of June to let folks take a look inside, see the work that has been done there. That's a project that's been in the works for some time now. So congrats to the folks at the EOC for getting that done and in work. We're now T minus 36 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. At this point, the pole will have been taken for the start of prop load. And again, if they are in a good position to do so, we're less than 2 minutes away from the start of fueling on the Falcon 9 rocket tonight. As we are likely preparing to get into the start of fueling on the Falcon 9 rocket tonight, I've seen a couple of folks asking about where the vehicle is going to be flying once it leaves the pad. So let's take a moment and talk a little trajectory, shall we? This is the Starlink 6-59 mission. The 6 meaning it's going to the 6th shell of the low Earth orbit mega constellation. And as is the case with all the other flights heading to that shell, it's going to be lifting off from Slick 40 and heading in a southeasterly trajectory once it leaves the Florida coastline. They'll follow that lime green path you see there on your screen, scooting just a little bit east of the Bahamas. Following stage separation, the first stage booster, tail number 1062 in the SpaceX fleet, is going to land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. They have 2 based here on the East Coast, and the one on deck tonight continues to be a shortfall of gravitas. Just read the instructions, getting a little work done in the Bahamas right now. And so shortfall gravitas is really stepping up to the plate, making sure these missions get done in the time frame that SpaceX is wanting them to. In fact, this will be the 70th booster landing on a shortfall of gravitas if all goes well tonight. SpaceX will also be recovering the payload fairings, at least that is their intention following stage separation. As you can see in this picture shown in a SpaceX talk a little bit earlier this year, they float down to the ocean waters, either Atlantic or Pacific, depending on where the launch is lifting off from. They glide down under parachutes. They're scooped up by, on the East Coast, one of 2 recovery vessels named after NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. Tonight they are using the drone ship known as Doug. Here's a picture of what that recovery effort looks like at another sunset opportunity, this one taken last year by the SpaceX crew. We are now T minus 33 minutes, 13 seconds and counting, which means that if all continues to move as expected, SpaceX is in fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket as we speak. We'll started just about 2 minutes ago now. See a helicopter cruising in the background. It was very brief, but I believe that was the Coast Guard, judging by the color scheme. Steven's telling my ear that, yes, that was in fact the Coast Guard. Of course, part of making sure that the launches are able to go off as expected is making sure that the hazard of the keep out areas are clear of any marine vessels along the ascent corridor up to a certain point. Those keep out areas are, of course, published ahead of time, so mariners are well informed, I'll say, of where they should and should not be going as we get into launch time. Be that as it may, of course, we've seen a number of times where those have been violated and unfortunately caused a scrub. So hopefully that will not be the case tonight. Take a look at the base of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. Fortunately, because this one has flown 20 times before, going for its 21st time tonight, it's got quite a bit of soot character on it. So it's fairly easy to identify where the liquid oxygen fuel line begins. You can see where the super cold locks that is inside the Falcon 9 first stage tank, sitting the outside of the rocket and meeting the much warmer and much more humid air here in Florida. It's creating a little bit of frost on the outside of the rocket and seeing a little vapor there to go along with it. Good sign that fueling is in fact underway as we are now T minus 30 minutes, 51 seconds and counting. At this point in the countdown, SpaceX is also loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels in the Falcon 9 first stage. That process is going to be starting in just about 30 seconds or so. The helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. SpaceX will also load cryogenic helium onto the storage tanks on the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket in about T minus 25 minutes. We're now T minus 28 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. Taking a look at the live chat. First off, want to thank the more than 6,500 of you that are joining with us live. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button. Allows more folks to find their way to this live coverage as we cruise on into the final 27 minutes and some change before liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket is set. Also, looking at the live chat here, want to thank channel member Norman Reitzel for a $9 super chat. Thank you so much, Norman. Also want to welcome new channel member Diane Bond joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Really appreciate that, Diane. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Christy Riley also joining us, channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, Christy. Our thanks to Mitchell Wilbur for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Mitchell, for supporting us at that level. Mitchell says, Callisti Lee, been busy tonight. Good job. You're okay too, Will. And yes, our mods are really the heroes of this live stream. So the kudos should go to them. Lastly, for now, thanks to Barbara for a $5 super chat as well. Really appreciate that, Barbara. Thank you so much for your support tonight. Now, T minus 26 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. I mentioned the booster that is flying this mission, going for a record 21st flight tonight. It's got quite the history on it, so let's go ahead and give it a rundown. We still have some time before the so-called big vent begins. A little less than 6 minutes. This Falcon 9 booster first began flying on November 5th of 2020. Started off by launching a GPS satellite, something that we all rely on in our day-to-day. I know I certainly do. GPS satellite was called the GPS-3 Space Vehicle, or SV-4. These GPS satellites are built by Lockheed Martin, and this was, as the name suggests, the fourth of the newer version of the GPS constellation. Named after famous explorers, this one was nicknamed Sacagawea, named for the Shoshone woman who guided Lewis and Clark on their famous expeditions in the 1800s. Next up was another GPS satellite for this booster that was on June 17th, 2021, the launch of GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 5. That satellite was nicknamed Neil Armstrong, of course, the first person to set foot on the moon. The third flight of this booster came on September 15th, 2021. Important mission, the Inspiration 4 flight. First time that a Dragon spacecraft chartered a commercial mission, and also the first all-civilian space flight to orbit. Of course, we'll see that Dragon Resilience back in action this summer again. It's been on the sidelines for a while as it has undergone a number of changes and upgrades in order to support the Polaris Dawn mission, which will include the first spacewalk without any government involvement. Fourth flight of this booster was its first Starlink mission. That was Starlink 4-5 on January 6th, 2022. There were 49 version 1.5 satellites on board. Fifth flight came on April 8th of 2022. This was the second crewed mission for this booster when it launched the Crew Dragon Endeavour and the Axiom 1 private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. Flight 6 came 21 days, 6 hours, and 10 minutes later on April 29th, 2022. So far, still remains the shortest turnaround for this or any booster. Flight number 7 came on June 8, 2022. Launch for Egypt-based company Nilesat, sending up the Nilesat 301 mission. Flights 8 through 12 were a series of Starlink satellite flights. Those were Starlink 4-5 on July 24th, 4-27 on August 17th, 4-36 on October 20th, Starlink 5-1 on December 28th, and Starlink 5-4 on February 12th, 2023. Flight number 13 came on March 9th of 2023. That was the OneWeb 17 mission, launching a batch of 40 of OneWeb's broadband internet satellites. This marked the third and final dedicated launch of OneWeb satellites for SpaceX. OneWeb completed its Generation 1 constellation with a launch from the Indian Space Research Organization. ISRO launched two flights of the Starlink, or excuse me, of the OneWeb satellites. SpaceX was given three dedicated flights, and all those satellites were built right here in Florida at the Airbus OneWeb satellite facility here on Merritt Island. Flight number 14 came on May 27th, 2023. That was the Arabsat 7B, also known as Batter 8. This telecommunications satellite was built by Airbus for the company known as Arabsat. Now provides C and Ku band coverage for Europe, the Middle East, and Central Asia. And then everything from Flight 15 on through Flight 20 were all Starlink missions. Those were Starlink Group 6-7 on the 28th, 6-23 on the 18th, 6-30 on the 28th, 6-38 on January 29th, 2024, 6-44 on March 16th, and most recently, Starlink 6-49. And a little bit of a typo there. That should actually be on April 13th for the Starlink 6-49 mission. Setting us up for the flight that we're getting ready to see here in T-minus 20 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. Starlink 6-59. We're now T-minus 19 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. See the so-called big vent is in full swing. Began right on time, meaning that things are moving on schedule with the fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket tonight. Still tracking a liftoff at 8:32 p.m. 0032 UTC. We're now T minus 16 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. We've got just a little under 15 seconds remaining before the big vent wraps up here. As you can see, it's starting to taper off. And now with the conclusion of the big vent, coming up in just about 20 seconds, we'll see the start of second stage LOX load. Things continue to move on track with the fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket. And while we are done with the visual of the big vent, we do have pretty stunning visual to bring you in its place. A look at our moon, courtesy of our friend Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions. We are lucky, as always, to be joined by our friends Pete Carstens and Chuck Briggs. This is a view again of the moon from Pete's camera, a little taste of what we'll be able to capture as the Falcon 9 takes flight in a little less than 15 minutes. Taking a look at the live chat now, I want to thank the more than 12,000 of you that are joining with us live this Friday night. We know you have a lot of options to get your weekend started, and we're very grateful that you chose to be with us for at least a little slice of it. Also want to thank some folks in the live chat. Channel member and our newest moderator, Callisti Lee. Appreciate the $20 super chat very much. And I'll echo her sentiment saying, if you haven't done so already, hit the like button to say happy belated birthday to Astro Joe. Happy birthday, Astro Joe. I hope it was a very wonderful and relaxing day for you, sir. Also want to thank Jeff Leonard for a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Jeff, who says, should be a wonderful night for the launch. Certainly is shaping up for that. Just under 14 minutes now. Want to welcome a few new channel members. Welcome to Robert Duncan and Carl Simon, both joining at the pad leader level. And a thanks to B. Porter, one of our existing channel members, for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, B. Thank you so much for your generosity. And to our newest channel member, be sure to thank B in the live chat and welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Thanks also to Sean for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Sean, for supporting us at that level. Sean says that he, along with Anne, are watching from Cocoa Beach, which should be a very lovely view of the Falcon 9 as it is flying in a southeasterly trajectory tonight. Also want to thank SG and Robert Duncan, two of our channel members, for gifting $5 and $2 super chats respectively. I really appreciate that from the both of you. Thank you so much. Now T minus 12 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. If you're just joining us, you're watching our live coverage of the Starlink 6-59 mission currently in progress. In about 12 and a half minutes, the Falcon 9 rocket you see there at the center of your screen, sitting at Space Launch Complex 40, will prepare to take flight, sending 23 more Starlink satellites up to low Earth orbit. This will be the 36th dedicated Starlink mission of the year so far, and will bring the total number of Starlink satellites launched in 2024 to 811. Coming up next month will be our first Falcon Heavy launch of the year. But of course, the Falcon 9 is SpaceX's workhorse. So for those not as familiar or for those who want to refresh, let's go ahead and talk about The Falcon 9 stands at 70 meters or 229 feet tall, with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Majority of that is made up by bottom two-thirds of the rocket, the first stage. This particular booster, tail number 1062, again has flown 20 times before, going for its 21st flight tonight. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin 1D engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen and produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs, which are used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Again, tonight SpaceX is using a shortfall of gravitas, and this will be the 70th time a booster has landed on that drone ship. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. And that image you see there on the right-hand side of your screen are those deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere tail first, like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the Falcon 9's second stage. At first stage, main engine cutoff, high pressure helium is used to release the latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. The second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage is the Falcon 9, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC burns the same propellant mix, that being RP1 and LOX, same as the first stage. Following satellite deployment, that upper stage engine will ignite a third and final time for a deorbit burn that drives the upper stage back into the atmosphere, where it will burn up and help eliminate the risk of creating unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the rocket, of course, are the payload fairings, which encapsulate the 23 Starlink satellites. The fairings are made up of a carbon composite material, and they are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, and 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two halves of the payload fairing will be recovered a little further downrange using the recovery vessel Doug, named after former NASA astronaut Doug Hurley, one half of the Demo 2 mission, which launched back in May 2020. Upon scooping up the fairing halves, of course, they, along with the booster on top of the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas, will all make their way back into Cape Canaveral, where they will be offloaded and brought back to Cape Canaveral, where they'll be examined, refurbished, and ideally cleared for future flights. SpaceX is in the process of certifying both its boosters as well as its payload fairings for up to 40 flights each. And of course, the booster that you see here on your screen is going a big ways towards making that happen, as this is flight number 21 for booster 1062 in the SpaceX fleet. And we're now T-minus 8 minutes, 10 seconds and counting, just a little more than a minute away from the start of the chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines, preparing them for ignition in 8 minutes. We're now T-minus 7 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. Want to thank the more than 22,000 of you that are joining with us live this Friday evening. Really appreciate you spending part of your Friday night with us, catching a Falcon 9 flight, either with your own eyes if you are in the Central Florida area or in South Florida, or maybe even down in the Bahamas. If you're in the area of the Bahamas, I'd love to see be able to catch the Falcon flight or the booster landing. That'd be spectacular. I also want to thank some folks in the live chat for your support tonight. Want to welcome a few new channel members. Want to welcome Small, Cole Cunningham, both joining us at the pad leader level, as well as Stacy Maxwell and Dashin A. Well, welcome to all of you, and we're glad to have you with us. Welcome aboard. Thanks to Morgan for a $2 super chat. Really appreciate that, Morgan, who is watching from Port Canaveral. I want to thank Jeffrey Wilkins and Tom Neal for each gifting a $20 super chat. Really appreciate that generosity from the both of you and supporting us at that level. That is very kind. Thanks to Deba Cuff for a $2 super chat, James Spencer for a $5 super chat. Thanks to the both of you, and one of our, I think, newest channel members, B. Porter, for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership as well. Thanks for the generosity, B. And to the newest channel member who just got that, welcome aboard, and be sure to thank B in the live chat if you haven't already. We're now T-minus 5 minutes, 39 seconds and counting. Let's do a quick run through of the launch timeline for this mission before we get to the Strongback retract, which is just about a minute away from now, so we'll move quickly. After liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket, the vehicle will pass through max Q at about T plus 1 minute and 11 seconds after liftoff. It's the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. After which there'll be a few different events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage management cutoff at T plus 2 minutes and 26 seconds, followed 4 seconds later by stage separation, and second stage engine ignition, SES-1, 2:36, followed by payload fairing jettison at T plus 2 minutes and 56 seconds. At T plus 6 minutes and 9 seconds will be the first stage entry burn ignition, that burn lasting 24 seconds in total, slowing down the vehicle dramatically and setting it up for the landing burn
for Strongback retract.
Just about the 8-minute mark. And the boosters should land on the drone ship, a shortfall gravitas, at about T plus 8 minutes and 22 seconds. The Merlin vacuum engine will cease firing at 8:41 point. We'll go into a coast phase until about T plus 54 minutes and 8 seconds. There'll be a 2-second burn, which will set up Starlink deployment at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 17 seconds. And as you just heard from that announcement, we now have mission audio coming in from SpaceX and some pad views to share with you, as the Strongback retract callout was just made. Again, that starts with the clamp arms opening up underneath the payload fairings, and then the Strongback will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. You can see those clamp arms opening up there on your screen. Just a quick bit of housekeeping here. You can see our countdown clock at T-minus 3 minutes, 45 seconds, just about 11 seconds ahead of what you see from SpaceX at the bottom of your screen. Reason for that is our countdown clock is in real time. The feed coming in from SpaceX is on a slight delay, so that's why there's that little bit of discrepancy. Now about 20 seconds away from the first stage liquid oxygen tank loading completing. And as you can see from this view here, sunset was within the last 20 minutes or so. So all things being equal, we should have a very pretty liftoff coming up in less than 2.5 minutes now. Now coming up on the 2-minute mark before liftoff. Once again, want to thank the nearly 40,000 of you. My goodness, the numbers have grown. want to thank the nearly 40,000 of you who are joining with us live. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button. Allow some more folks to find their way in, as we are now less than 2 minutes from liftoff.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
And with that call out, SpaceX has now fully fueled their Falcon 9 rocket. That venting you're seeing here on your screen are the ground gas closeouts, as we're now just about a minute and a half from liftoff.
Ground gas closeouts.
As we're coming upon the final minute of the count, I want to thank a few more folks real quick here. Thanks to James Spencer, Mike Didzik, Rick O, Malcolm Darwin for each gifting $5 super chats, as well as channel member I Am Lita saying hello, Spaceflight Now family. Thanks for all you do, Will, team, and mods. Always great to be watching here with you all. And we will come back to the live chat on the other side of the liftoff, but for now we're going to focus on the rocket. As you just heard, the vehicle is in startup, and we are waiting for the launch director to give their go for liftoff in moments.
SpaceX launch director, go for launch.
And there's that final go for launch call. We are now less than 30 seconds away from SpaceX's 36th Starlink mission of the year, Starlink 6-59. 20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Entered ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. Now 15 seconds into flight. And a beautiful ascent of the Falcon 9 rocket lifting high above Florida's Space Coast. We're getting some great views from our tracking team here. This view from our tracking camera here at the press site. Falcon 9 now traveling faster than the speed of sound. Coming up on max Q, one of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. There's the call out for max Q. Coming up on a few different events in fairly rapid succession here. We'll have first stage main engine cutoff at about T plus 2 minutes and 26 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation 4 seconds after that. 6 seconds after that will be the second stage engine ignition, and then fairing deployment at about 2 minutes 56 seconds. This view from Chuck Briggs and now Pete Karstens. Coming up on 2 minutes into flight. So far, all appears to be nominal with this Falcon 9 mission. Here, call out for MVAC chill down. They're thermally conditioning that Merlin vacuum engine and preparing it for its ignition following stage separation. And there you see Miko. Still a great view of the Falcon 9 rocket with the sun hitting it. Stage separation and second stage engine ignition. And looks like we're going to get a really nice jellyfish effect here. Look at that. Coming up on fairing deployment. There go the payload fairings. course, the Falcon 9 flying high enough that it's still able to reflect the setting sun here. And so we're getting a really nice jellyfish effect, which is essentially what you're seeing here on your screen, the setting sun hitting the plume of the Falcon 9, both first and second stage, creating that almost aura around it. And those bursts you're seeing and the big box on your screen, those are from the Falcon 9 first stage. It's the cold gas thrusters, helping to adjust the attitude of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. We should continue to get some great tracking shots through a lot of this process tonight. The lighting conditions are basically exactly what you would hope for on a night like tonight at this time of day with this few clouds. As we're now a little more than 4 minutes into flight. Still very visibly seeing both the payload fairings, the Falcon 9 first stage booster, which is at the bottom of your screen in the big box. At the top is the Falcon 9 second stage. Excellent job by the tracking team here, and seeing some really nice onboard camera views from the Falcon 9 rocket as well. That top right box is the Falcon 9 first stage, of course. You can see the hypersonic grid fins extended. Now a little more than 5 minutes into flight. The bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you can see the Merlin vacuum engine continuing its burn, and from its vantage point, the sun has not quite set over the horizon line of the Earth. Coming up on 5.5 minutes into flight, the next event we're expecting is the first stage entry burn beginning at about T plus 6 minutes and 9 seconds. Still got good eyes on the Falcon 9 second stage here, or our on-ground tracking camera. There's a view from our Adam Bernstein's camera here at the press site. Just a hint of a dot, but still visible above the cloud line here from our vantage point at the press site. You see the start of that entry burn. Going in between some cloud layers from Pete Carson's vantage point here. That energy burn is wrapped up in real time, about to end on SpaceX feed as well. With the conclusion of that entry burn now, we are 7 minutes into flight, less than a minute away from the first stage landing burn beginning. You can see the speedometer on the Falcon 9 first stage booster continuing to plummet rapidly as it makes its way down towards the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. I call the Falcon 9 first stage booster transonic, or traveling below the speed of sound. In real time, we're just a few seconds away from the start of that landing burn beginning. The time you want to look for right now is the SpaceX clock at the bottom of your screen. It should start at about T plus 7 minutes and 59 seconds. See that burn starting right on cue. Views from the drone ship should be coming up momentarily on the right-hand side of your screen. And for a 21st record-breaking time, Booster 1062 is down on the drone ship.
APEX shutdown.
And with that call for MVAC shutdown, the Falcon 9 second stage enters into a parking orbit where it will coast until about T plus 54 minutes and 8 seconds, when there will be a brief 2-second burn, setting up for the Starlink satellites to deploy at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 17 seconds. And my goodness, what a beautiful liftoff that was. We certainly appreciate the all of you that were here for our Friday night launch coverage. We're going to go ahead and thank some folks in the live chat now who helped support it, make this happen. And then we'll close things out as we always do with a look at our launch stats as they now stand with a good liftoff and landing. Want to thank Exploded for our $5 super chat. Really appreciate that. Our thanks to United Nations Space Command, one of our channel members, for a $5 super chat. Good to see you again this evening, United. Who says, watching from Cape Coral, hoping for a clear view. Also, for a beautiful orbital sunset launch with a nebula effect. Well, we certainly got that in spades tonight. Ian James with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Ian, saying, thank you, Spaceflight Now mods. You were appreciated. Well, thank you, Ian. We appreciate you and your support for what we do here. Want to welcome Tinkle joining us at the pad leader level of channel membership and then supporting with a $5 super chat, noting a lovely jellyfish effect that we got here tonight. Thank you so much. Sergeant Jazz with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Sergeant Jazz. And finally, Mitchell Wilbur gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you so much for your generosity, Mitchell. Really appreciate that generosity tonight. And with that, let's go ahead and begin to wind things down as we always do with a look at our mission stats as they now stand with a good liftoff and landing of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. This was the 21st flight of 1062. Well on its way now towards certifying up to 40 flights. This was the 336th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 51st Falcon 9 launch of 2024. This was the 279th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This is SpaceX's 52nd launch of 2024 when you factor in the third integrated flight test of their Starship rocket. Of course, if you're following the SpaceX program closely, you know that they're well on their way towards Flight 4, and they have a fully stacked Starship down in the Boca Chica area at their Starbase facility, waiting on FAA approval, of course. This was the 115th SpaceX orbital launch in the last 365 days, the 186th orbital launch from Pad 40, and the 241st overall orbital launch from this pad to date. Here's where the bar chart stands. Oh, we're going to some recovery stats first, excuse me. This was the 70th landing of a booster on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas, marking the 241st SpaceX drone ship landing and the 309th overall SpaceX booster landing to date. Here we have our bar chart look at the SpaceX Falcon flights on the year so far. Just 10 away from catching the total number of launches from all of 2022. It's well on its way to breaking that record. And finally, in mission stats from around the world, we have this is the 37th overall orbital launch from Florida this year, the 57th orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 58th orbital launch from U.S. Rocket Company. We've got Rocket Lab coming back in action with a pair of launches, first of which is coming up no earlier than May 22nd down in New Zealand. Getting ready to add another one to that total. This was the 94th orbital launch from around the world with one partial mishap and one complete launch failure. This is what the pie chart looks like right now. The US with 57 missions on the year. Russia with a launch yesterday, bringing its total up to seven. China with 22 and a partial mishap. Japan with a complete launch failure and the two asterisks there. India and Iran each have two orbital launches so far in 2024. We're in the process of trying to bring in some of the launch photography and a photo or a short video clip from a cruise ship out in the Atlantic Ocean. Really nice perspective of the Falcon 9 ascent. So we're working to bring that to you in just a moment here. We'll go ahead and take a look back at the live chat now and welcome aboard our newest channel member, JL Schmidt, joining us at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, JL. Glad to have you with us. And our thanks to Hunter's Run Adventures for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Hunter's Run. Really appreciate you supporting us at that level. It's very kind of you. Looking at some other comments here in the live chat as we're getting that video into work. Looks like Swind was watching from down in Martin County here in Florida, saying you could see stage separation, also the fairings showing up as well in the sunlight, which is excellent to see. John Shaheen was watching from Jensen Beach here in Florida, saying it came down the coast right past my condo. Best launch I've ever seen, which is always very cool. Our thanks to Stephen Ross for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Stephen. Really appreciate that support. Stephen says, thanks for all you do. Hope for a good launch. And certainly that's all you can hope for. And it was quite something. Of course, if you haven't already seen the news from earlier today or had a chance to pop over to our website, spaceflightnow.com, you'll know that the Starliner CFT mission, the crew flight test, has shuffled to the right a little bit more. It is now targeting a liftoff on Saturday, May 25th at 3:09 p.m. Eastern. They are continuing to look at the helium leak on the service module of the Starliner capsule. I want to make sure they have a more complete understanding and assurance that it will not impact other elements of the mission. It was believed that it was not going to be a launch limiter during the May 6th launch attempt. And so now that they have gone back to the VIF for the valve on the Atlas V upper stage. It was a oxygen pressure release valve that they were needing to replace. That's why they went back to the VIP and why the mission scrubbed. The helium leak would not have scrubbed the mission on its own, but now they are taking a more thorough look at it. They want more time to assess the data from the pressurization test. And so that mission, again, going forward, currently no earlier than May 25th. In the run up to that, though, if you'd like to pop over to our shop, which is shop.spacelightnow.com, we do have the crew flight test mission patches, as well as the mission patch for the upcoming SpaceX Crew 9 flight, which is set to lift off sometime in the late summer, around August. All right, we're ready to show you this launch replay. This is from a cruise ship in the Atlantic Ocean, a little bit south. You're taking a look. The video picks up just after stage separation. You can see there from this vantage point the distance between when the, MECO happens and when the Merlin vacuum engine ignites. The beginning of its coast phase here, or the start of the second stage engine burn, I should say. Again, this view out in the Atlantic Ocean from the vantage point of a cruise ship here. I believe our friend who shot this caught it right about at fairing separation, or you can just barely make out the payload fairings as they start to fall away from that Falcon 9 second stage. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close things out. Want to thank briefly, though, Cindy Price for $5 super chat saying thanks again. Coming in at the buzzer. Appreciate that, Cindy. And want to thank the folks who made this coverage possible tonight. Our thanks, of course, to our wonderful moderators, Astro Jen, Astro Joe, Callistia Lee, Stephanie B, Rusty Shackelford. Thanks to all of you for all you do in the live chat, helping to keep things kosher and allow folks to enjoy their time and enjoy each other's company, talking about spaceflight and all other things happening in everyone's lives. Our thanks to our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck Briggs for providing some excellent tracking views tonight. Our thanks, of course, to our ace photographers, Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane, who got some great shots of the launch tonight. If you're not already following them, you can find them on X, A Burn NYC for Adam, MD Kane Jr. for Michael. And while you're there, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. And if you're not there on X, you can find us on Facebook and Threads as well. Thanks, of course, to our editor, For Spaceflight now, Stephen Young for running the technical operations of the show, and most importantly of all, thanks to you for wherever you're watching from for being with us on a turned out to be a fabulous Friday night, kicking off the weekend in a stellar fashion. And if you haven't gotten your fill of launch coverage, we do have one more launch that is on tap. It is unfortunately very painfully early on Sunday morning. That is the NROL 146 mission lifting off from Vandenberg Space Force Base, a mission for the National Reconnaissance Office, which is currently set to lift off at 12:22 a.m. Pacific, 3:22 a.m. Eastern, 07:22 UTC. Back here at home, we're looking at another Starlink mission launching around May 23rd, looking for Starlink 6-62 to lift off then. And finally, I'll note that Rocket Lab will launch their Electron rocket mission called Ready Aim Pre-Fire, setting up the first of two of NASA's pre-fire satellites, an acronym, of course, standing for Polar Radiant Energy in the Far Infrared Experiment, or pre-fire mission, part of NASA's suite of on-orbit or soon-to-be on-orbit spacecraft, helping to better understand our little blue marble. And that'll do it for us tonight for our live coverage of the Starlink 6-59 mission. One last time, thanks again for being with us. And I see we did have a couple of last-minute super chats come in. And thanks to Hunters Run Adventure being a member for 1 month, saying we're getting the grandkids hooked on watching the launches. They'd love to hear you. Say hi to them on the air. So hello to Remington, Kimber, and Maverick. A very special hello to the three of you. And that'll do it, folks. So for all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I am Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time. Good night.